Imagine seeing the king of rock and roll, once larger than life, dazzling the world with his voice and charisma, reduced to someone his closest loved ones could hardly recognize. Linda Thompson, the woman who knew him best, watched in disbelief as the man she once adored seemed to vanish before her eyes. What she witnessed that night left her shaken, calling it devastating and unforgettable. But behind that heartbreak lies a hidden truth, one that stunned even Elvis's most loyal friends, and it's a story you won't want to miss. By the mid-1970s, the unstoppable force that was Elvis Presley had begun to show cracks beneath the glittering surface. The endless nights on the road, the demands of a grueling schedule, and the dangerous reliance on prescription drugs were slowly stripping away the strength of the man behind the legend. What the world saw was still the dazzling performer in rhinestones, but behind the curtain, the toll was becoming harder to hide. His health faltered, his energy waned, and yet the machine of fame demanded more, pushing him onto stages night after night. Amid this storm stood Linda Thompson, who had shared for intense years by Elvis's side. She had witnessed both the tender moments and the darker struggles, and by late 1976, her heart longed for something Elvis's world couldn't provide: peace, stability, and a life unshaken by chaos. Their parting wasn't bitter, but marked by the quiet ache of two people pulled in opposite directions. Linda stepped away, but the image of Elvis lingered with her, strong in her memory, full of charm and life. She couldn't have imagined how quickly that image would be tested. As the new year unfolded, Colonel Tom Parker, ever the strategist, was already crafting the next spectacle. He arranged what would become a final TV special, determined to keep Elvis in the spotlight no matter the cost. Cameras were set to capture him on stage, showcasing the king to millions once again. But the timing could not have been more fateful. Just weeks before the world would lose him forever, this plan set the stage for a performance that revealed far more than Parker, or anyone, intended. And for those who loved him, what they saw was nothing short of devastating. In June of 1977, two concerts, one in Nebraska and another in South Dakota, were chosen as the backdrop for what was meant to be a triumphant television event. Cameras from CBS were set up to capture every note, every move, every flicker of Elvis Presley's presence on stage. Fans filled the arenas, eager to see the king once again, and for many in the crowd, the chance to witness history felt electric. But what those cameras ended up preserving was something no one expected: a haunting glimpse into a chapter of Elvis's life that few were prepared to face. Gone was the vibrant, commanding figure who had once conquered the world in his Aloha from Hawaii special. In his place stood a man visibly burdened, his body heavier, his face weary, and his movements slowed by the weight of more than just time. Though the voice still carried flashes of its old brilliance, the contrast between the Elvis of memory and the Elvis on that stage was jarring. To those who loved him, it wasn't simply a change in appearance. It was a painful reminder of how much he had endured and how fragile he had become under the relentless demands of fame. Even those closest to him were shaken by what they saw. Jerry Schilling, a longtime member of Elvis's inner circle, could hardly believe that Colonel Tom Parker had allowed the cameras to roll in such a state. To Schilling, filming Elvis under those conditions felt unthinkable, almost cruel. He questioned how anyone could put the king in front of millions at a moment when he was clearly struggling. That disbelief would echo for years, leaving behind not just a performance on tape, but a troubling question about loyalty, responsibility, and the price of keeping an icon in the spotlight at all costs. When the televised concert finally aired, Linda Thompson found herself standing in front of the screen, almost frozen. The man she had loved and cared for over 4 intense years was right there before her eyes, but something felt achingly wrong. "Not the man I knew," she would later say, her voice heavy with disbelief. To Linda, it was as if the Elvis she had said goodbye to only months earlier had been replaced by a stranger, someone frail, weary, and far removed from the vibrant figure she once held close. The shock ran deeper than appearances. Only 8 months had passed since their parting, and the memory of that last farewell was still vivid in Linda's heart. She remembered the warmth of his smile, the spark in his eyes, the presence that seemed larger than life. And yet, what she saw on that screen was the erosion of those very qualities, unraveling far too quickly for her to comprehend. For Linda, it wasn't just a fan's disappointment. It was personal, a painful reminder that time and turmoil had stolen something precious from the man she once knew so intimately. And still, even through the heartbreak, there was a contradiction that tore at her emotions. His body might have betrayed him, his strength might have faltered, but his voice, the very essence of Elvis, cut through the decline like a flame in the dark. Each note carried the weight of pain, yet also the brilliance of an artist whose gift remained undeniable. For Linda, it was devastating and awe-inspiring all at once. The agony of watching his decline mingled with the undeniable truth that even in his weakest moments, Elvis Presley could still leave the world breathless. That night, as the music swelled and the spotlight fell on him, Elvis sat at the piano and began Unchained melody. For Linda, watching from afar, the performance was nothing short of gut-wrenching. Each lyric seemed to pull straight from his soul, filled with a rawness that words could never fully capture. It wasn't just a song, it was a confession, a plea, a final outpouring of everything he had left to give. The way his voice cracked and soared in equal measure left her shaken, unable to reconcile the man she saw with the voice that still carried such astonishing power. Elvis's longtime pianist, Tony Brown, later recalled that very moment with awe. He admitted it was perhaps one of the greatest performances Elvis had ever given, precisely because of the pain woven into every note. Brown couldn't explain why the song carried so much weight for him, only that it seemed to cut deeper than any other, as though Elvis himself was bearing wounds invisible to the crowd. To those who knew him well, it was haunting, an unforgettable glimpse of the man behind the legend, channeling every struggle into his music. And therein lay the heartbreaking paradox. His body was failing him, slowing, weakening with each passing day, but when he opened his mouth to sing, the king still reigned. The audience may not have seen the depth of his struggle, but they heard the truth in that voice, a voice that rose above the frailty, commanding, aching, yet undeniably alive. For a fleeting moment, Elvis Presley's spirit broke free of his decline, and what remained was a performance that would echo long after the lights dimmed. What makes this story even more unsettling is what came after the cameras stopped rolling. The footage, meant to showcase Elvis to the world, was locked away by his own estate. They admitted, without hesitation, that he had been far from his best, and that the special captured more struggle than triumph. The decision not to release it spoke volumes, as if those who knew him best wanted to shield both Elvis's legacy and his fans from seeing the truth of his decline. It was a startling move, one that hinted at just how fragile things had become behind the glittering facade. Priscilla Presley herself later shared her own painful memories of those final performances. She confessed that at times, Elvis couldn't even finish a song, his energy drained and his willpower nearly gone. For her, those concerts were not just difficult, they were heartbreaking, a reminder that the man who had once seemed invincible was now barely able to carry himself through the very thing that had defined his life. To Priscilla, the stage had transformed from a place of triumph into a place of quiet suffering, and watching him, there was almost too much to bear. And yet, there was another side to the story, one seen not through the eyes of those who loved him, but through the eyes of the fans who adored him. They didn't see the collapse behind the curtain, the exhaustion that overtook him the moment he stepped away from the lights. What they carried home instead was the memory of a man who still gave everything he had in those fleeting moments under the spotlight. They left uplifted, spiritually moved, as if they had witnessed something transcendent. That contrast, the hidden pain versus the joyous illusion, is what makes those final nights linger in memory, shrouded in both tragedy and awe. If you've been moved by this story, we'd love to hear what you think. Do you believe those final performances should ever be seen by the world, or should they remain a private chapter in Elvis's legacy? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more untold stories, and share it with fellow Elvis fans who would appreciate the conversation. Your support helps keep these powerful memories alive.